have a developer side. In the committee, there's a few people who are development minded and quite a few not so much. But yeah, it's quite cool. I mean, this is a background document and the thinking they went through. The numbers that people were, there's a mathematical modeling kind of in it. Look at this.
So this, Frank Mitchell gave it to me. I forget when, so it was, I've just had a hard copy.
Yeah.
So if you want another copy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's an urgent thing, it's just, it's like 1996. Yeah, 1997, 96. That's a while ago. And it led to a bunch of decisions like this is going to
When was this?
I think 1996 or 7. Like Frank was on it, Ronald Wood was on it.
Yeah, and it was a commission.
Saunders, Jerry Strawson. It was pretty neat. It was fun to look at, just fun to imagine all those people working together. Hi Jeff. Hey, how are you? Good. Anyway, thanks for flipping it to me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Special Finance Committee meeting of December 5th, 2024. I acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Siano and South First Nations. The District of Metchosin is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and we recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous peoples past, present, and future. Please be sure to have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. Committee, we have an agenda before us. Are there any additions to the agenda? We'll add the paints just after the reports. Anything else? Okay, may I have an approval?
Motion to approve amended agenda.
Thank you. Approved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Okay, open remarks. Okay, so like most municipalities, the district faces a gap between desired improvements and financial capacity. Meeting the needs of services that support the community is essential. Today, we are reviewing the capital budget to approve projects for RFPs or grants, increasing the likelihood of completion during the 2025 fiscal year. It is a time to have public participation. I would ask anyone that would like to speak about Flesh Road to do that after others, at which time I will recuse myself. So if there's anyone who would like to speak right now, not in relation to Flesh Road, I would ask you to speak to that first, please.
I have a question. I have two things that I'd like to speak about. One is Flesh Road and one is something else.
Should I something else be now? Sure.
And then I can get it again?
Flesh Road. I'll indicate to everyone when that part comes.
Okay, thank you.
I made a comment about last time. This time I'd like to be just to let you know I've looked into your recusal. You do not have to leave the room while I speak, or anyone speaks on Flesh Road. You cannot vote. And if anybody would like to take a minute to
Thank you
check
very
that
much.
motion.
This is correct.
Please.
However, I would be more comfortable, as I have done in the past, to declare that at that time. And please state your name and the street.
Tamara Ballard, Metchosin resident. So I'm speaking tonight, thank you for the opportunity, by the way, about section, or Schedule H on the agenda, and it's about the garbage receptacles in the village core. I think it's a great idea, but you're adding another job to Public Works that is already taxed. So, with that being said, I do hope that you take into consideration the request of having another staff member while you're adding another job onto them. And also, keep in mind too, it's a great design. I like that it's bear-proof. Depending on how big the hole is on the inside, there is definitely going to be domestic garbage there. It's inevitable, people do it. So that's something to take into consideration as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place. Thank you very much for the opportunity. First, I want to commend Jeffrey Creek for his openness, transparency, and the success he has in making the district's finances understandable to the uninitiated like the rest of us, and for highlighting in understandable language the perilous state of Chosen's finances. Coming into this, the fifth special council meeting with regard to the 25-29 budget, we were already looking at a property tax increase of more than 10% over last year's property tax bill. This 10% increase largely covers costs which have to be paid, whether we like them or not. They are mandatory. Tonight we start looking at discretionary costs, costs which we control and over which we can say either yes or no. It becomes clear that if we include those projects which were meant to be done under the previous budget but were not, monies have already been budgeted for these, which could be included in the upcoming budget. Other projects identified are those which can be paid by grants. After that, there is no budget room for additional projects until reserves are replenished, and new sources of revenue are found. I do have a couple questions. I'll leave Flesh Road till later. But I have questions, some of the assumptions that may go into the classification of roads for repair. I take a look at Eagle Tree Place, for example, which would have been built in 1996 or 1997 by Ted Lister. A road with only 2 residences, no heavy truck traffic at all, except for the garbage removal, which comes in twice a month. A road surface which, after 26 or 27 years, remains in extraordinarily good shape. I imagine that there are other roads like Eagle Tree. Cannot such roads such as this be accommodated within a longer, long-term replacement schedule? Thank you again, and I really commend Jeffrey for his work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on broader topics?
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. I'd just like to speak to Mr. McPherson's comments on the CFO's disclosure. Having had some substantial experience with it in the past, it's nice to see the substantial improvement in the level and the clarity of disclosure that we're starting to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, so I will now declare myself to be recused based on perceived conflict of interest of the subject in my neighborhood. And Mayor Little will chair in my place. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue the public participation portion of the meeting, specifically if there's any comments about the Flesh Road Bridge.
Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place. I question as to comments certainly on the bottom of the project sheet, why Flesh Road cannot be reclassified as a local service road, particularly since there is the opportunity apparently for somebody to pick up part of the costs. Alternatively, I wonder also as to why this road, which quite frankly I think goes nowhere, can't be removed from the road registry altogether, as many roads and road allowances have been in the past. Fundamentally, however, I do wonder on the basis of the presentation why so much public money is being spent on a project to benefit so few or no people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this topic?
No, you go ahead, I want to follow you.
Go ahead, Chair.
Tamara Ballard, Metro resident. A few things. I too did notice that it said if the district turned the bridge into a local service road, then a local resident would be willing to help with the cost to the district. And then I noticed today that that paragraph is not on here anymore. So we'll start with that. Now, the next thing I'd like to bring up is the cost. So I have two reports from December 2022. The costs were for remediation and repair was a total of $240,000. Total deactivation was $270,000. Pedestrian and cyclist use $44,000. Now jumping ahead a year, November 2023, repair and remediation $332,000. Total deactivation $369,000. Pedestrian and cyclist $60,000. And then today, with a wholesome report, I might add, actually, there is an index of a couple pictures back here that states everything that should be done. And then we get today's. With all due respect, it's lacking, for better terms. I don't recall the project actually being approved in 2024. The $40,000 has been a carryover for many years and never done anything with. The deactivation of Flesh Road is now $148,050, considerably less. The design for remediation for pedestrians is $141,750. It was $60 last year. And it's the same price to make it a vehicular bridge, which again, that was $332,000. That's quite the difference. So I'm not quite sure where the numbers came from. I know that previous years it was from Harold, Al Hurley, where's Harold Engineering. This year, no idea, just some random numbers. So if that could be clarified, that'd be great. I said in November, actually, I recall saying that I fully support making it into a pedestrian bridge. I still feel the same. I do not support the remediation for vehicles when it is for the purpose of somebody's farming. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at public participation?
I have a letter written from a neighbor. May I read that first before I introduce myself? This letter is written by Gordon Birch of 985 Ferncliff Place. Mayor and Council, I want to express my concerns of how important keeping the access at the end of Ferncliff Place open and accessible to vehicles. I understand the situation I experienced a situation a few years back while attending a model air show in Richland, Washington, when a fire broke out. As we watched it come over the hill towards us, we could not believe how fast it was moving. When we were all of a sudden given an evacuation order. Couldn't do well at this. By the time we packed up and tried to leave, we realized our exit was blocked by firefighting equipment. Because it was scary and dangerous, thinking we had no way out. Someone found another exit and we were led to safety. It was extremely scary, thinking we had no alternative exit. So as a resident at 985 Ferncliff Place, I know the importance of stating my concerns of the closure of the Flesh Road Bridge as a fire exit. Sincerely, Gordon Birch. Penny Ray Scher, 995 Ferncliff Place, and I'm speaking on the Flesh Road Bridge as I have previously. I don't know, do you match up what I said before? I don't have to repeat anything, I'm hoping. But I will start off with the similar post from Facebook that had me jumping, and funnily enough, the bottom line that said, "The only resident who benefits from this is the one that holds the key while the taxpayer foots the bill." And I'm going, excuse me? There are over 25 families in this subdivision that require that bridge to be kept open as our second egress in case of fire. I know the captain has already said they would not be using it to bring fire trucks in, of course, unless that whole area was under fire to get in to begin with. I think minds could change quickly. But with that being said, there is no other exit to get out if those fire trucks are coming over that very narrow, which I do recommend they take the no posts out, make it a little wider, because pedestrians don't need that much protection as much as us not hitting fire trucks, us not hitting dump trucks, us not hitting the school bus coming over that bridge. It's a very narrow bridge. But I'd like to bring to your attention that the federal government has guidelines for having more than one exit and egress for potential fires. My children was preactive. Yay, they put a fire exit 30, 40 years ago, or deemed that to be. Someone else, I believe my other neighbor has sent a letter regarding what he had to do in order to prepare for that bridge as a fire access, or maintain it as a fire access. When I talked about how many number of people that could be at risk, that's only on the Ferncliff part. We still have High Mount. When they had that fire on High Mount, no one could exit that subdivision at all. That neighbor that maintains the access to that bridge was asked to open it from another neighbor who was so scared if that fire spread through the bush. We've been lucky. The two major fires we've had in that property area have not had a wild fire situation with wind added to it. But that wind comes over that hill, that's closed down. That being said, I have a number, I don't know who to pass this out to, but I can pass several. As a reminder, there was a petition. I understand there's other petitions going around for, say, the Saddleback access to the trail, and they're being adjudicated, they're being looked at respectfully and with great interest. This has over 33 signatures, I believe, and I don't even believe it got up to High Mount. We can get more, but these are not people who care that a farmer has access. These are people that care they have a second fire access in a very closed off area, very highly wooded area, a very windy that comes up and over the Chosen Mountain, as well as Neeld Mountain. We set our clock at 4 o'clock every summer night for the wind. It's my neighbor that wrote the first letter, he experienced it firsthand. They were absolutely terrified. They all packed up those little planes of theirs and their trailers, and only to be blocked by fire trucks. And that, Stephanie, is our biggest fear. You have to take the room you have to take. But we need, if you're coming in off of Glen Forest Way, we want to get out onto Happy Valley. Somebody, I think it was, maybe we could walk. It was mentioned, it's in the minutes. At the time, I had an 80-year-old tenant and a 76 that has been to our house, had fire, saved her life. We're not walking out with our buckets for our, I only hold a degree in that, business continuity, but you know, you have to have your safety bucket and make sure you have all your phone numbers, all your photos you don't want, your hard drives, whatever it is that you feel is important for you to get out. I don't think I'm humping it a half a kilometer down the hill. I can't even get up to the top of the hill. So anyways, with that being said, we have a petition. I want it to be highly respected in the motivation behind it. The neighbors are nervous. They never thought about the bridge before, I'm sure, but they're thinking about it now after that wildfire. After our heat dome and the fire across the street, and then the fire on High Mount. It's blocked. We're blocked in. It's very nice to sleep at night to know that that doesn't matter. But what I haven't heard in any of these expenses is the critical risk factor the municipality faces if they choose to not turn that, to leave that and repair it as the fire access. The risk being, I wouldn't be the only one thinking that the damages might have not occurred had that bridge been open to certain assets. House may go, that's fire insurance. But if the bridge isn't maintained and the access from Glen Forest can't be used by the fire trucks, but it could have been used to come over Flesh Road, but now it's not maintained, so they can't. That poses another liability for the municipality because it's a choice. It's always been there. It was required to be there. The federal government states it should be there for anything new, and we've been proactive, thank you very much for the previous councils, and now because of dollars, and not for one person, but for 30 some odd families that live on Ferncliff, and I don't know how many live on High Mount. So I would really like you to reconsider the fact that this isn't just to service one person. This is peace of mind, it's safety, security, just like we put sprinklers on our roof. May never use them, doesn't matter, they're there, they give us peace of mind. I think I covered what I was going to say.
And yes, we did receive the letters from Mr. Young and Mr. Clark.
Thank you, yes, they're very important. One was, I believe, said he was sending it because of the money he expended just to get that subdivision completed and that him to be able to build. I don't know if they got liability. There's passive liability, critical liability, and certainly
Okay.
they all have to be addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments for Flesh Road?
Gear Lamb, Hackmore Drive. I can appreciate the former speaker's concerns, but I just caution they're not the only area in the chosen that has single roads out. There's other isolated areas, so I just point that out to the council.
Thank you.
But I point out, may I come up then?
No,
He did,
no, well, let me do all of our first-time speakers.
but he spoke on that.
Leonore Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. Of course, I worked for the Ministry of Transportation when all of this was done because there wasn't a municipality. And that was done because that is part of the act. You have to have, at that point when you made a subdivision, it says you have to have a road to get out. And that's how that road was put in, for the people on that area to another fire access. Because if you look at it, or looked at it before it was built, and that is the priority in those days. And I'm sure if you look up the records, because we turn all our records back to you people, you will find that. That is why that is there, if you have your records still. And if you don't, well, that's what, the reason why that road was created. It's under the subdivision process, and it's an act. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public participation?
Good afternoon, committee. Brent Donaldson, Challister Court frontage as well as Flush Road. I'll just give you a little quick overview, snapshot for those in the audience and those who are watching at home. The road was established approximately 100 years ago. Was gazetted in the 40s. The bridge was rebuilt in 1979, by the Department of Highways. The district incorporated in 1984. The bridge was rebuilt in 1979, so it came to the district when incorporated in very good condition. We bought our property in 1989 and established our farm, and we have had continual use out of Flesh Road since that time. In 1994, the Highmount subdivision was created, and through that process, there was a gas line attached to the bridge, and there was construction of the emergency access on Lot 10. There was a statutory right-of-way in favor of the district that was chosen for that purpose. There's some question about the gate that's at the end of Flesh Road at Happy Valley. That was installed in 2000 with a development variance permit, and some of the letters of support also come from our local police department, namely Brian Kerr, who witnessed a lot of dumping, illegal partying, and drywall and whatever. So the gate was installed at our cost of $2,500, and we did get all the proper approvals from the council of the day. The bridge report started to note failures in 2006, and in 2009, wing wall on the east side was replaced, and that came through a motion through Councillor Milne and Councillor Mitchell to spend up to $10,000. So that was repaired. And in 2011, there was another suggestion as being suggested in 2022 that the bridge be removed and the road be closed. It was pointed out to our CAO of the day, Mr. Martinego, that actually this road does not only service one individual or one property, it actually is emergency access to service the Highmount subdivision. One thing about that bridge, it holds up two profit-making organizations, at least one anyway, which is Fortis Gas. Every time gas goes underneath that bridge, somebody gets money for it. It's not us. So their ability to contribute was lost probably around 1994 when they connected it to the bridge, and the district did not make any contract on maintenance. CRD Water the same, although it is a government organization. We get water bills. Certainly I get mine, and I get my water. It comes from underneath the bridge. So it's kind of, if we're actually being used in a sense. At least that's my way of looking at it. So fast forward, here we are, 2024, 2022, with 2 business days notice. I was notified that the bridge was going to be, or the road was going to be closed. So that was put off for a while. We've had lots of studies. I'd just like to say first, before my time runs out, I really think you should emphasize and respect the folks that live up on Highmount Drive. I said that bridge is there for them as well as for myself and my family, and is used daily by walkers, equestrians, but the opportunity to have fire trucks go across there to me is very important. And I do emphasize the fact that many petitions over the years have been respected by this council, and I certainly hope the one that's before you this evening is handled the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this issue? Okay, with that, I'll close public participation, and we'll get the other chair back in.
Okay, so let's move on to the next part of our agenda, number 3, which is reports. And I'd like to ask Mr. Creek to come to the podium to do the presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Through the chair. So this is the last meeting that we'll have for 2024, and this is going to be for our capital budget, the funner stuff. I can only answer basically one question out of that whole thing, is about the engineering report for Flesh Road, where that came from. It was through Herald Engineering this year. That's where I got the numbers from. I put those in. That's all I can do. Whether or not that actually ends up being the cost, not for sure. If it was approved by council, and we put it out to tender, and they came back and said it's going to be 330, 350, we would come back to council and say, do you approve of that cost? Because you only approved 142, and then choice would be yours again. So, moving on to the fun part. Yeah. Oh no. Fail. One sec. Is the battery good?
Let me just switch to TV.
There we go. All right, let's say we're okay. So capital projects. How do we pay for these things? Mostly through grants or reserves. Grants coming from the federal government, provincial government, or NGO, like non-governmental organization. Examples, we get the gas tax, growing community funds, accessibility grants, etc. Those are applied for on an annual basis, or we just kind of give them gas tax, just an annual thing, just keeps coming until everybody's driving an electric car, then they'll have to come up with something new. Reserves, so these are the taxes that we've collected in prior years and put into a reserve. We're generally budgeting for amortizing or depreciating the assets that we use, such as the roads, buildings, and equipment. Amortization is not an actual cash cost, but what we put aside to do the future replacement of those assets as we use them. So right now, Metchosin is receiving these 4 grants on a ongoing annual basis. So the small community grant, we received $513,000 this year. This is provided by the province to any municipality that has less than 19,000 people. It's based on the number of people that you do have, times their little formula. Community Works Fund, gas tax, this is through UBCM. So this year we received $294,000. We're going to get that as well in 2025, and then it goes up to $304,000 starting in 2026, and that's for the next 3 years after that. Fire Smart grant, this is something the chief went off and got for us to help with all the Fire Smart activities in the district, like the chipping and home protection, that kind of thing. That's $200,000 a year, and that's for the foreseeable future. And then the local government climate action funding. So they gave the district $173,000 to cover the next 3 years, which is roughly $75,000 a year, hoping that as we show progress on greenhouse gas emissions, they'll continue to do that funding and we'll get that. But all I can say is we've got it for the next 2 years. What they do after that, I'm not too sure. So right now, in Metchosin reserves, so for capital reserves, we've got a total of $12,765,000, and that was at the end of 2023. After we bought the new single axle truck for this year, we have emptied out the municipal equipment replacement reserve. That is now 0. So we're down to about 12.4. The growing community fund, that was a one-time shot. That was from the province when they had a bunch of money to spend and didn't want to keep it. So we've got $2.5 million. That's going to come up as some kind of decision that the council needs to make. And the rest of those, other than the gas tax reserve, those are all funded out of our taxation. And then our operating reserves. So this totals $4.9 million. The big ones that you can see there, police and phase-in, so that's helping to reduce the increase in cost because of the RCMP. So instead of doing one big jump of 16% one year, we're going to be doing about 3% every year for the next 5. And we slowly whittle down that police reserve so that we don't have to do such a big impact on anybody. The next biggest one, recreation stabilization. That comes from our taxes from West Shore. So we collect from residents, but we also collect it on our bill to the federal government, and we throw that extra into the recreation stabilization to offset any big capital requests that West Shore comes up with. They say, hey, we're going to need $25 million for a new hockey arena, and they ask all the municipalities for $2 million. We're like, hey, perfect, we've got that. We don't have to do any big tax increases on anybody. We've got a decent reserve sitting there. And then the rest of those are just kind of based on, as you see, climate action, legal insurance consulting, revenue shortfalls, public works efficiencies, business development, environment, elections, MOCAS. Do we have any questions right now, as that stands?
I do have a question. Thank you, Mr. Creek. In your report, you had mentioned that the gas tax must be used within 5 years. So I'm thinking you mean allocations that come to us. So the allocation that might have come to us in 2019, would that have to be used by now, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it should have been used by now.
Okay.
When you have to do annual reporting to them in June, saying, here's the projects that we have planned for using our gas tax money. And then if you don't have it planned to be used by the end of the 5 years, they want you to explain why and what you're going to be using for in the future.
Okay.
They generally don't ask for it back. It's a big hassle.
How are we doing in terms of using those funds?
Through the chair. Pretty good, because you do a lot of road projects. You're spending a lot of money on that. So that's the easiest one the gas tax goes to, is the roads. There's been some money going into trails this year for studies and that type of thing to get that rolling. And then in the 5-year plan, I am kind of budgeting for, all right, let's use all this to offset the road costs that are coming up because of the road study that's just being wrapped up now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Creek. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilor?
Through the chair, this impressive piece of work, thanks for putting it together, Mr. Creek. Just on page 4, you mentioned the idea that we can move money around between, I think, the capital reserves, or some of them, that you've noted the ones we can't, and then the operating budget. But we don't do that now. We do that when issues come up, then we move the money around depending on our needs. Is that how it works?
Through the chair, correct. Yeah, no. Right now everything is looking pretty good. It'd just be, say the fire hall comes up, that study comes back, says this thing's going to fall over in the next year or two. You're going to need $10 million to build that. Well, we don't have $10 million in one set reserve, so we've got $3 million in the building replacement, 2.5 in the growing community. So if you wanted to go and take the recreation stabilization, okay, we're going to transfer 1.8 into our building replacement reserve to pay for that. But nothing that you need to do today or this year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mary Lou?
Thank you through the chair, and thank you for the report. And that's not true of the Growing Communities Fund. As I understand it, the Growing Communities Fund was to be put into a reserve and not to be taken out into other reserves, but it can be replenished, or it can be added to. Am I correct?
Correct. So the Growing Communities Fund, can't really do that. Gas tax reserve, iffy, depending on what the purpose is going to be for that.
Thank you. And then another question, Chair. Through the chair, in your opinion, are our reserves where they should be? I asked the same question at the CRD when we were going through the reserves this year and last. Thank you.
Through the chair. As they sit now, for what we have projected for the next 5 years, you're fine. And if we spend everything in the current 5-year plan, we can use up these reserves, we'll be down to about $2 million. So everything's good in that regard. Now looking at our long-term plan, not so much. And that's where we're going to come up to these numbers here. It's a little short in that. So in 2023, you presented a report on asset management, I believe by Sam, could be incorrect on who actually did it. But when I was talking to Councilor Gray, he forwarded this to me, and I had found the long-term asset management planning workbook and everything. And so this is what came up last year, was that there was a funding gap of $58,000. Most of this being based on the buildings themselves and then some of the fire vehicles. Like they were showing that roads is overfunded by $316,000. I was a little concerned about this because it didn't make a whole lot of sense in that they said the replacement cost was $45 million for these roads. That's our book value for roads, not the replacement. So what we paid for it in 1999, 2000, 2005, etc. That's what that is. So right now, our annual amortization for all these assets is $1.398 million. So $7,000 greater than sustainable funding, apparently. So when I looked into these spreadsheets and the costs and everything else, costs were a little low compared to what they are today, and this was just based on 2-year difference. And then how they were factoring in the roads was a little bit wonky to me. So they were saying that the top was going to have the same life as the base. So the base has a 100-year life, but the top is 30 years. Now, as Mr. McPherson pointed out, a bunch of roads here, perfectly fine because there's 2 or 3 people using them on a daily basis. So, but I can't be that precise, unfortunately, right now with the software we've got or my capabilities. So I just have to base everything kind of on averages. So when I adjusted for this life expectancy for the top, adding the new cost that I'm seeing for 2024, instead of having a $300,000 surplus in road funding, we've got a $240,000 gap. And this made a little bit more sense to me. I believe we're still undershooting, mostly because I only focused on the roads for this practice. The buildings could probably be higher, the bridges, and the fact that we were only accounting for 4 out of the 7 in the district. But here we show sustainable funding is closer to 1.9 million, which would be $500,000 more than what we were putting into reserves. So last year, 2023, you allocated 1.4 million under that actual funding, as shown there. So 800,000 for roads, 244 for buildings, 120,000 for fire vehicles, 41,000 for bridges, which was higher than I thought, but that's also just being allocated into the building reserve. So there's not a specific bridge reserve, but as it goes. So $547,000 is quite a big number, and you're looking at about a 15% tax hike based on that $37,000 per percent. I'm under no idea that you would actually approve of a 15% tax hike in a single year. That's quite a bit. But also we get to play the long game with this because they are assets. Like the roads last for a long time, same with the bridges, the buildings, fire equipment, etc. So we don't need to do this all in 1 year. Not everything's going to fail the next year, the next 5, next 10, 30 years from now, certainly. Going to have a problem if we don't change where we're heading, or we don't magically get more grants from something, how that goes. But it's better to play it safe and say, okay, how do we want to handle this? So in the report, kind of laid out 3 options there on page 7, where hey, you can maintain the current allocation, probably end up having to reduce some service levels, whether that's the roads themselves. So rather than the wonderful roads that you have now, they're great, but go for a few more cracks, a few more potholes, and let that service level of 90% plus go down into the 60s and 70s. And then when a big project does pop up, you will have to take on debt. Or we can do annual increases over the next 5 years to get up that 15%. That reduces the chance of significant problems and gets us into a steady reserve. We can earn lots of interest on that funding before we have to use it. That reduces any future tax increases. Number 3, saying, hey, long-term assets, long-term plan, 10 to 15 years. If we do 1% per year for the next 15 years, you get to where you need to be. and barring any unforeseen disaster kind of happening, should be totally fine. We won't have to be a big drop in service levels. Everybody continue to have great roads and not have to worry about anything too much. Questions?
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Creek. It seems to me that there's these three options here, obviously, that we can look at. We're looking at a double-digit tax increase at the moment and hoping that we'll be able to shave that down with some consideration of not meeting the service levels that are proposed by the staff at the moment. But I think that to be prudent managers, we do need to add money to the reserves this year. That may mean reducing services somewhere else to do this, but not doing it, I think we're already in a kind of a serious place. We'll be in a much more difficult spot. So I would like to see if Mr. Creek could actually model for us for our next meeting what it would look like if we had, say, 1% per year, just to get going on funding reserves. I recall that we've already approved a 3.3% increase in the requisition for West Shore Parks and Rec, simply to build up their reserves. It seems reasonable that we ourselves would do similarly, given the information we've got here. And understanding it's not perfect. I mean, I think Mr. Creek has taken a look. He said, look, let's be careful with what we're doing here. So if that would be make sense to others, I would certainly like to see that in our next meeting or when it's appropriate.
Any other questions for Mr. Creek on this point? Councillor Shukin?
Through you, Councillor Donaldson, not even a question, but I would echo Councillor Gray's thinking about, I was just as you were speaking, Mr. Creek, I was thinking, how does this work? How could this work to get us to that sustainable level and responsible level of funding? And yeah, it's probably would be incumbent on this council to have a model to understand what it would look like over the next little while. And yeah, I mean, I think there's always a temptation by the council of the day to keep taxes low for that political immediacy. And I hope we don't kind of fall into that sort of trap, and we can think in the longer term as well. One thing I have to say though is to me, what I thought was the most powerful, or one of the most powerful sections in this report, which actually is quite significant in terms of its implication, the whole report that Mr. Creek has provided us, is it's on page 7, and it reads, since the business and industrial tax base is less than 2% of the total tax base, most revenue comes from the residential tax base. So since 2013, the tax base has grown only by 15 additional parcels, which includes a loss of 6 businesses, meaning that all the increased costs of the past decade, RCMP, school site, inflation, etc., are being shouldered by the residential property owners. So that is, for this community, that's a significant fact that I think we are always going to have to grapple with. So again, long and short, I would support, if Mr. Creek can do it in good time, a model of how we might bring up those reserves.
Councillor Abt, did you have any comments on this? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next part, please.
Perfect. So, on to some better news. What's happened in 2024? So, what we've done is install some new heat pumps at Municipal Hall. Hopefully reduce the cost, makes it a little more comfortable in here during the summer and winter. Did a lot of road patching, nearly $250,000 worth, and finished up the school renovations. And thankfully that was all paid for by grants, so nothing out of the specific taxpayer here. Here's a little bit more review. So purchased that single axle truck for Public Works, lots of road repair, the Woody Beach stairs. We've had a number of projects that haven't been completed this year. So the Municipal Hall roof for $115,000, the Fire Hall roof, which is $350,000, the Flesh Road Bridge, that's kind of based on cost, it seems like, and then a few fire department costs, such as the fire hose replacement, these bottles that contain gases, and then the fire hall replacement itself. 2025, so based on what I've compiled into page 27, right now I'm carrying over the Flesh Road Bridge, so it was 40, now 142. Municipal Hall roof was 115, bumping up to 120. Engine 6 replacement, that was full 500,000. Haven't adjusted that price, although might need to in the near future. And then Machosen Road, that was 76,000, now 78,000, based on that recent road assessment. New ones for the year, proposing a municipal electric vehicle for 65. That'll be offset by some grants from the federal government and provincial government. The school septic tank, so this is scheduled to be replaced in 5 years, but we're going to put $20,000 a year for the next 5 years, so we got all the money when we need to. There's just going to be minor repairs in the near future, and that'll come out of the operating budget. And then Happy Valley Road to Leafield for $390,000, Rocky Point to Marydale for $106,000, Briarwood for $80,000, and Boblaw for $109,000. And if we take a look at page 27 there, so previously the 2024 to 2028 capital budget showed $1.4 million for roads. We've reduced that down to $763,000 based on the top 5 projects that came from the road survey. That's ongoing. Any questions about these current projects?
Yeah.
Councillor.
Through the chair, Rocky Point doesn't go to Marydale, because I live on Marydale. And it goes to Tiswild. So I don't know what section that
So
is.
I question that as well. I think when we look at the other ones as well, like Happy Valley doesn't go to Leafield, it's the road in between.
That's right,
So
yeah.
I think you're right.
So there's some, and Marydale only has one. But anyway.
Fair enough. Through the chair, my apologies. So I just kind of took it from the report that I was given by Public Works. So I didn't look at the report itself on what was going on, but I can certainly go back and revise the road specific. I think the costs are still accurate, but probably, yeah, as I say, where they actually end
Yeah.
or lead to could probably be updated. So I can get that in for the next report.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Schulte.
Through you, Councillor Donaldson. Mr. Creek, the idea with the septic field is it developing like a mini reserve fund? So you have that 100,000 when you're ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Rather than just put in $100,000 for 2029, okay, well, make this easy. We'll just do 20,000 because we're not getting a grant for that per se. So that is coming out of our regular reserves, which is taxation in the long run. So rather than having one big swipe at it, we'll slowly piece it together and then maybe we'll get some more money on it.
Okay, thanks.
I think probably the Happy Valley Road to Rocky Point to Marydale is Tiswell, from Rocky Point through to Marydale. The question about the Boblaw, I think there's probably 5 residents, 6, maybe 7 on that road. It seems like a lot for a very small road with very few residents. It's a dead-end road. I'm wondering if we can take a look at that again, do some patching rather than, thank you. It's very similar to Still Middle in its composition.
So Mr. Creek, is it my understanding that it's paving these roads, or is it patching and or crack sealing? What are the estimates for?
Through the chair, my belief is that it would be kind of repaving it, not just a little patching here and there. It would be
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray.
Through the chair, and this, Mr. Creek, may not be something you've got a handle on, but I'm curious about, and maybe council knows, the road condition when you leave Machosen driving towards Royal Bay or the gravel pit, just before you hit Duke Road East, Machosen Road is quite rough shape. Is that our road or is that Colwood's road? You hear from residents about that particular spot as not being well
So,
maintained.
Chair, our road goes right to the Albert Head, going into Rocky Point, and then where it, on the other side of the street, unfortunately, is about where the sign, or welcome to Machosen sign is. So it's 2 different sort of areas.
So is
But
that
the road, yeah, we would have to ask Mr. Watkins. I suspect that would be Machosen's responsibility because it's before Albert Head.
Well, maybe I just asked that request that Public Works take a look at that. I'm not certain about how one would repair it, but it's a rough spot there, and I've got a lot of traffic on that one. And then I'm just thinking, through the chair, you've mentioned the upcoming roads report, and I think that's sort of good news in the sense that, remember last year we heard from resident Frank Mitchell saying, hey, your capital project going out doesn't seem to include what might be happening, but am I right to think that we would, depending on the receipt of that report and the timing and everything, we would start to enter in the data going in the out years for the roads?
Through the chair? Correct. Yeah, I just put a placeholder in there for 2026 through 2029
Yeah.
because I don't know what exactly is going to come around. All I know is what are we going to do next year, and give me a number that's ideally less than $1 million that we can spend. So,
Thank you.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, through you. I notice we're getting into the specifics now, but I can't resist. So on page 27, I notice one of the projects is Lombard Drive. Now, I don't want to be a traffic or a construction engineer, but Lombard looks pretty good in terms of pavement. But I'm wondering if the allocation there is actually for the paving of the road, or is it to deal with the trees that have been identified as a safety risk?
So through the chair, do you mean like the under transportation there? Where
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
Lombard and then Machosen?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they had 180,000 budgeted in the 24 or the 28 capital budget.
Okay.
I've pulled that out. So the pink columns there are my adjusted 25 to 29 capital budget. So I removed it just because it didn't show up in the report that I was given from Public Works. And I was like, all right, perfect. We don't have to do that. So save $180,000 and
Great.
problem solved for now.
Okay. No, when we did the site tour of the poplars, we were marveling at how good the roads seemed, given the legendary nature of Lombardies to pop up lawns and pavement whenever it's kind of in their way. So yeah, the road looked really good.
Yeah, and I do believe that there was some significant resurfacing down the bottom part of that road this summer already. Is that correct?
Ooh, good question.
Okay.
I'd have to check with Public Works if they actually did that or not.
Yeah, it's not the whole road, it's just the bottom section. But
Yeah, did spend a lot of money, so could have been done.
okay. Any other questions on this video? Okay, we'll move on to the next part.
Okay, all right, so that is basically the end of the big presentation. My concern now is a few of these items. So there's a bunch of sheets at the back of the report there based on what's going on, kind of requests. The main one that, if possible, council could decide on tonight would be in relation to the bulk water station. So this is something that would be done in conjunction with the CRD itself. They just had a meeting on Tuesday, and they are requesting 50% of the funding in order to pay for this bulk water station. That's slightly above the last bulk water station they did with a different district. They had them pay 40%, so 50% would be $175,000. Checked with the province, we could use our climate action funding for that. When I was talking with the CRD, they mentioned the previous district had used their gas tax funding for it. So either or essentially both, would be one way to handle that. But if we get approval for that one, we can go back to the CRD and get the ball rolling. The soonest they can have this, if we say yes in the next few months here, would be to say they're going to start on January 1st, 2026, and it would be operational September 2026. It takes them about 9 months to get this whole thing installed. So if that's possible, awesome. If you need more time to think about it, well,
Councillor Shukin.
Through you, Councillor Johnson. If we were to signal an interest in this, it doesn't sound like it's a commitment. What it would be is the CRD going away and doing, again, a financial performer, if you will, or if we have to commit to it like fairly quickly. Would you want us, or would you want us to commit to it tonight, ideally?
So through the chair, I ideally would want you to commit tonight.
Yeah.
I can't force you into it.
Yeah.
If you got to give them a month delay on it or two, they can likely still squeeze it into their 2026 budget. but the sooner the better certainly for them. They need to get the certainty around, and then they also need to go back and then recalculate the rates that they're going to charge everybody who uses bulk water. So one of the issues why we can't get into the 2025s because they'd have to reconvene their board, redo the rates, and have to go through that whole conundrum again. So that's why they're pushing it to 2026. So I want to give them a yes or no answer sooner rather than later, but I can certainly see if you want to hold off for next month. It's a large commitment, but I know there's been quite a big push for the bulk water station, so just trying to give them some clarity.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that just a little bit. So we did have our board meeting on Tuesday, as Mr. Creek has suggested, and I passed all the most recent information to him. So earlier this year, as you'll recall, I organized 3 different water talks, and at each one of those there was an educational component, you know, how to capture rainwater, how wells actually worked, and we had 3 different presenters, and on the final one was Mr. Joseph Marr, who's the engineer that we were working with from the Wanufuka Distribution Branch, and he spoke to this actually on Tuesday by saying how many people have come out to these sessions and recognizing the locations of the other bulk water distribution boxes being so much further away from the chosen. The one thing I did emphasize is 25% of our residents are on wells, and each year those wells are drying up earlier and earlier, and that came out of those sessions as well. And that could be, we don't know all of why, but climate would be part of it, urban development. It's a very big aquifer. There's a lot more development going to be happening, and as at least 3 of you here at this table have wells, you've also expressed that. So this is what I've been advocating on behalf of the residents that came to those sessions, things that we've heard from residents, including yourselves, and we do have support of the board, including our neighboring municipalities that sit at that board, but also the staff. So time is of the essence. You can keep pushing it off year after year, and or we can do this now with the support of CRD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And thank you very much, Councillor Donaldson, for advocating for this. And as a follow-up to the sessions you held, we convened a small group of residents to talk about water issues. And they were the residents that were typically outside of the CRD distribution area. There was significant support for a bulk water station because people were beginning to understand that how expensive it would be to actually bring up piped water, prohibitively, I would say. Yeah, I like the idea. Yeah, just leave it at that. But.
So in addition to that, the staff from the water board have also met with our staff as to some locations. And the location would have to be on municipal property. And so our options look attainable. We'll see what that can all be adjusted accordingly, but there were reasonable solutions. Councillor Shukin, did you have a comment?
Mr. Gray.
Or, Mr. Gray.
Yeah, more a question. So at the Regional Water Supply Commission, we're considering, the very large projects under the master plan, and we've been going through the process of creating development cost charges. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that new people, it's called benefit or pay principle. So the people who are benefiting under the development cost charges, the new residents will pay the freight on the new capital projects that serve them. And then existing users will pay for upgrades in the system that they're receiving their water from. And I'm curious to know how that works for the bulk water station. Is it that the district puts it in representing all taxpayers or all residents, or does the charge apply simply to the people who live and benefit from the bulk water? Just don't know the answer to that.
So
once the users.
So we're paying a portion for it to actually be established in a location, and then it's user pay after that.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Well, I would support this. I think having a well run dry for many, many years, I think it's, and we don't, on our road anyway, there isn't enough residents to ever have a hope of getting piped in water as it requires a pumping station. So I think for people, there are people on our road that run out of water and have to have it trucked in. And trucking in water now is getting to be hugely expensive for families. So I think that, I know it's user pay, but I think that would still be more economical than it is to have water. And also as an emergency spot for drinking water if you need it.
Ma'am.
Yeah, I echo the comments of my colleagues here at these sessions after Mr. Marr went through how much it would cost to bring in piped water. There was considerable interest from those people that participated in these workshops for the bulk water station. I would support it as well. We used to have a well that was that would never run dry, and then all of a sudden it ran dry very early in the season in May, which we hadn't seen before. So the aquifer is being stressed, and we need to look to the future and what some people are doing, and there will be a point where people won't be able to afford the water rates for trucked in water. So I think it's expensive at $175,000, but I think it's something that we need to do for our citizens.
Previously, and there are people in this room who had this experience as well, we had neighborhoods, the Arden Road District, the Zodiac District, where they also had compromising wells. Those are our particular properties. Those were years when we had infrastructure grants from both provincial and federal. And as it's been explained to me from the staff of the One Feet of Water Distribution, they're always looking at grants too, but those grants are few and far between. So now this is another option, because as we learned through these different sessions we had earlier this year, you need a 90% buy-in from your neighbors to get piped water in your neighborhood. And the neighborhoods now that we're talking about, which is Laban, many parts of Kangaroo and Neil Road and the subsidiary roads that come off of that, those are uplands lands, and it is cost prohibitive getting the piped water in. So this is another option that may be more attainable for our residents. Councilor Gray.
Well, I think the other circumstances have been mentioned already, but we're having real drought issues. And so having the clarity now on the question of it's the district's role to pay for this along with the CRD, and it looks like CRD will pick up half the cost. I'll make a motion, and I guess I'll recommend to council. We don't have the authority to make the decision, but I recommend that the Finance Committee recommend to council that we approve the expenditure up to $175,000 for a bulk water station in Metchosin in partnership with the CRD.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilor Gray, seconded by Councilor Shukin. Any further comments? Councilor Shukin?
So through you, Councilor Donaldson, to Mr. Creek. So if we go with $175,000 or up to that, are you confident that that is the figure that will allow us to get moving?
Through the chair. What do I say? 85-90% confident. Cost can go up, especially since this is not going to start until 2026.
Okay.
But CRD's been doing this for a while, and I'm going to have to trust their staff that the 350 is what's required, because they did just do the analysis on what this is going to cost. So I'm hoping they've booked in some inflation into their estimate from 2020 into 2024 to the start of 2026, and they know how much it costs to pay their employees. They've got their equipment pretty well.
Okay.
So hoping it's right in line with it.
Yeah. Okay.
And Councilor Gray, did you have something to add?
I did, but I've forgotten.
Okay. Okay.
And at the very least, I think that amount would give CRD a signal that we're serious, and if there's anything we can talk further about. So.
Councilor Gray.
What I was going to say was perhaps we could wait and hear back from Mr. Creek about which reserve to draw from. We also have the Growing Communities Fund, which is a very large fund. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Mary Lou?
Didn't you already identify two, the climate action plan or the gas, formerly the gas tax? Those would be the two funding streams that we would use?
Through the chair. Correct. I would aim to use that local climate action funding. It's an easy one, and it eliminates my reporting requirements from them once we use all that funding up. If I just say, here's the one project, we're done. We just prevented trucks from having to travel from East Sioux or Langford into our district trucking water, and they can just pick it up here, do a shorter trip. Makes everything easier. We use up that funding. We've shown an immediate reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Everybody's happy.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, the reason, excuse me, through the chair was simply the question of looking at what else we're going to see here in capital, and when we get closer to the end of the budget, we determine which fund it would come from. I noticed that, for example, the environment fund is running lower now than it was, and so I have some questions about reserves, which will come later. But I appreciate Mr. Creek had mentioned the two funds, but I also know that we do have the Growing Community Fund as well. Thanks.
Okay. And
I don't believe the fire department has had a chance to look at this project either, so
okay.
fire review.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that.
The fire department hasn't had a chance to review the report.
And is that a negative to not proceed?
No, just to have a look at the location and effect of
Because I believe it was Public Works and probably some other members of our staff had met with the Wanufica Water Board staff several months ago.
Okay, so for the record, the point is the location has yet to be determined.
There are two options for sure. Okay. And the Water Board is flexible on that. That's determined by our staff, of course. Thank you for that. Any other comments before I call the question? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the next part. So Schedule E is what the next one is, correct?
Yeah. I wasn't planning to go through all of these. That was my main one. Like the rest of them, you can certainly take your time on reviewing them. We don't need to jump into it right away. If any of them have struck a chord with you and you're like, yeah, I definitely want to do that project, you can certainly give us the okay and pass that on to council to say, yeah, go ahead forward, and we'll start doing the requests for proposals and tenders that are needed. If there's anything that you want to pull that was originally in your 2024 through 2028 capital plan, let us know. We won't do it, which is the roof or a different truck or equipment or anything like that. We can certainly adjust for it. But
okay, so before we move on to that, I just need to know from the committee, on the next page, of course, is Flesh Road Bridge. If you wish to speak with that, I need to know now so I can accuse myself. Or if you, and I'm sure each page you may have a comment on. Is that correct?
I had a question about the Flesh Road Bridge, so that maybe we do that. We can.
Okay, so let's do that. I declare that I may have a potential conflict of interest, so I'll excuse myself during this part of the agenda and ask Mayor Little to chair in my absence.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Creek, did you want to do any introduction to the item on page 31, or should we go straight into questions?
through the chair, I'd say straight into questions. I think we've had the discussion already about this project. I'm glad I'm not in your seat.
Okay, Flesh Road Bridge. Does anybody have any questions regarding this? Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
Thank you. I guess I had a couple of questions. I think we've already settled up at council the question. The fire chief has taken a look, said this is not a necessary egress point, but we heard today there may be federal legislation, so that would be worth knowing.
I think the fire chief report said not egress, but they wouldn't use the bridge to go in. I think that's what it was. It wasn't egress, but they would not use the bridge to go into Ferncliff. Not egress, not coming out from the community, Ferncliff, down the statutory right of way onto the Galloping Goose and the bridge.
I'll review that then. I was understanding that the opinion was in relation to the idea of was the Flesh Road Bridge needed in the event of a fire. But I'll take a peek at that again. So that maybe is a question for myself to sort through and just to find out if there's federal legislation that we need to be following. But the question I have mostly tonight was what's going on? Very difficult to accept these numbers given that we've been given, we were first, resident Tamara Ballard spoke already about this. The numbers were in the $200,000 range going up to $330,000 each time we've gotten a review. Now we get a review at less than half the price, and I'm wondering what's going on. So I'd like to understand a bit more about this, and not to ask Mr. Creek tonight, but maybe we could just find out, like, is this a bespoke bridge? Is it a Bailey bridge? What's happened that the price has dropped so dramatically? Also, the price for a cycle bridge or pedestrian bridge has gone up by $100,000 on a base of $40,000. So, or 40 and then 60 and then 140. So just a bit more background as to what's happening so that we can be satisfied these numbers are more or less firm. It strikes me that they may not be, and making a decision on it is rather difficult. I'm noting that the numbers are virtually the same with any option at the moment, but there's quite a difference previously, meaning there was a decision to be made if we were actually going to move on this, and that's why I'm interested in a bit more info. And I mean that no disrespect to the author this time around, but there's a lot of background on this one, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question regarding the changes in the costs. Do you want to reflect those?
Yeah, so through the chair, I was shocked, I guess, when I was presented today with the old report from last year showing that 332 versus what we were given in the past couple of weeks from Herald Engineering. I don't know why there's such a discrepancy, but happy to go back to them and be like, hey, last year you said this, now it's this, what the heck are you doing? It doesn't make sense to me either, how you can go from that to that, especially in today's day and age with inflation and construction CPI for everything. So happy to check into why it went down. Maybe some regulation disappeared that they don't need to meet anymore, but that seems unlikely. But happy to dive into it and find out what's going on.
From my recollection, this is more in line with the 2022 figure of about 60,000, 15,000 per abutment to be replaced on all four sides, which would have been about 60,000. I don't know why. So one of the questions that I had was the remediation for a vehicle bridge at 140 that would also allow pedestrians and equestrians to go across, right? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Epp.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to make any kind of a decision until we actually know what the numbers really are, because it seems it's pretty confusing. The bridge, I do support the pedestrian equestrian improvement for there because I feel that I know if the main road gets blocked off, it is still possible for people to get out along the Galloping Goose Trail in either direction, and the Galloping Goose Trail is large enough for a vehicle, a car, if, I can't remember what the turns are like there to get onto it, but it would be possible that a vehicle could get out on the Galloping Goose. And certainly it's suitable for egress for pedestrians, cyclists, mobile scooters, and things like that could get out. I think we really have to know the numbers and then make the decision on that, because it really is a private bridge. So yeah, I wouldn't like to see it taken out entirely because it's important access to the Galloping Goose. But that's the way I would look at it. I think a lot of us we're certainly on a dead-end road with only one way out, and I think that's the case for a lot of people in the Chosen. I don't think it's the district's responsibility to, you know, to add extra roads?
Not
Okay.
Not
Or fix extra bridges?
Okay. I think it is the responsibility of the district. On the top of Levon, there is a emergency access road that needs to be maintained. Wasn't part of that subdivision. There's no bridge there, but there is an emergency road going down onto one person's property, so they have a statutory right of way. I don't think it can be called a private bridge because pedestrians go across it every day. And others use it, so it's not a private bridge. I'm glad we moved away as a committee towards deactivation of the bridge or doing nothing. We really need to do something about this. We can't let it fall into the creek. We've got the Fortis and the water on there. That is extra responsibility. So we need to live up to our responsibilities. But I really, I think we need to pay attention to what has been done in the past with the subdivision, not hinged, but there was a stipulation of the subdivision that there was an emergency road access onto Happy Valley. And then the homeowners were made to apply for driveway permits. If they're asked to apply for driveway permits, surely the plan was never to close that bridge. Otherwise, they would not need a driveway permit. And as well, the other landowner was told that they needed to maintain the statutory right-of-way. All of that would have been done to no avail if the plans were always to close the bridge. So I'm in favor of keeping the bridge open to both limited traffic with a gate on it, and then equestrian and pedestrian. I think we will also need to do something with the rails along there. I don't think that is included in the project, but that will be minimal. But we will also have to do that on a neighboring bridge as well. And if I remember correctly, the bridge at Dallimore, forgotten what the name of the bridge is, was actually in worse shape than the Flesh Road Bridge from the evaluation. So I would be in favor of option number 3 at this point. Anybody else? Councillor Shugan.
Thank you very much. I would like to also get more information in terms of what these costs are. But more, what's behind the costs and what's resulting in the change that we've seen. I mean, I took some comfort in seeing these, but are they numbers that can stand up, like in the, the test of time, the test of guys actually working, men and women actually working on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But the broader thing for me here, this has been a challenging issue, particularly when we were looking at the bigger cost amounts, and thanks to Ms. Ballard for raising some of that past history. And especially when we saw that to deactivate the bridge was the most expensive option. And essentially we're working hard and in an expensive way to get nothing. To me, the bigger question here is, what is the public good? What is the best approach to achieving the greatest public good here? Looking at finances, looking at public safety, looking at community value, because the bridge is used for pedestrian access as well as from the landowners nearby. What are our obligations? There's a mention of a subdivision and the obligation. I thought we had tested that one a little bit further and we didn't find anything about, could be wrong on this one, but I didn't think we found anything that obligated us to have that second access. So again, the question is, what are our obligations? And then again, what's the district's liability? It'd be wonderful and maybe too much to ask of a staff that's stretched on so many fronts if we can get a report answering those questions. Again, they're complicated. She Dunlop mentioned some limitations she would have in terms of bringing apparatus over that bridge in a fire situation. So again, there's some questions around that. But again, long and short, I would request more information. And then I think that's the question we have at this table, is what is the public good? in terms of, this bridge and greater community interest, I'd say.
Councillor Gray.
And I'll just ask, thank you, through the chair, if we could check with Fortis and the CRD as well. I'm noticing that the report, just a year old, I guess, it was $150,000 to remove the gas line, and now it's $141,000 to remove the gas line, water line, and take down the bridge. So there's something wrong. So Fortis and the CRD would also need to be involved in letting us know what their costs are. So, thank you.
Okay. So with that, we'll ask a staff to report back on that with some more concrete information regarding the figures.
Great. And then the other point, Mayor Little, you've raised about Dallimore. I wasn't aware there was a problem with the Dallimore Bridge. We've got the $5,000 a year to bridge inspection. But if it's in worse shape, maybe we should move that up ahead of Flesh Road if it's worse. If it's going to fall into the creek.
I didn't say it was going to fall into the creek.
Worse shape, I think.
It was in, I think, according to the ratings from the bridge report, that bridge was in worse shape than the Flesh Road Bridge.
So maybe we could find out a little bit if that's what the state of that is. Thanks.
Okay. With that, we'll conclude the discussion on Flesh Road Bridge and turn to the Dogs and the Chosen Working Group and get the other chair back in.
Getting tired?
Getting there.
It's your exercise for the day. Ew.
It tastes delicious.
It doesn't look delicious, I'm just saying.
Okay, so moving on to Schedule F. Do we have any comments from the committee on this particular capital item? Councilor Schumann?
Question I would have is, how many signs are we talking about? Like, do we have I am in favor of this. Just again, I think it's a good support for the Dogs and the Chosen Working Group in terms of what the great definition that they had put forward in terms of under control. And there have been some incidents that people at this table are aware of dogs not being under control. And I think this signage would allow us to do some enforcement as well. So, but the question is maybe how many signs would we be able to do for 10,000?
So that would depend, I believe, I don't know the cost of everything. I know the sign itself is probably the least expensive. It's the Telspar post, the hardware, and the pyramid block that goes in, plus the labor. So I don't have a breakdown of that. I'm hoping that Mr. Creek has more more knowledge on that. And $10,000 is a lot of signs. I mean, maybe it could be less. I don't know what Mr. Creek's estimates are on that. Councillor Schuken, or Gray.
I've got some notes here from the Dog Working Group. Their recommended signage for Taylor and Weirs Beach was the main entrance of each beaches. Prominent large sign at both ends of Taylor and Weirs beaches. So entrances and both ends. One sign was about the behavior of the dog. Dogs are permitted off leash on this beach on the condition that the dog returns immediately, in that language. Another, sounds like similar location would be leave no trace, pick up after your dog, pack it out. And then they were also recommending signs on the fence and property lines adjacent to Taylor and Weirs Beach, saying active farming or keep dogs out.
Correct.
So those are the ones I have.
Right, and having sat on that committee, as well as I met with Ms. Whitehouse recently, prior to budget talks, to look at different locations and which ones would be priority is something to flesh out as well. Another one was the schoolyard, and may not need to be mounted except on the fence, but these are things that would have to be passed through staff. Councillor Schuster?
So I'm wondering what we should do in this case. I don't want to keep asking staff for more information, but.
Well, I suppose the question is 10,000 too much, or do you want to be reduced? I think that's what Mr. Creek is going to be looking for, is some guidance on to how much we want to spend. I'm not sure exactly where we're at as far as our tax rate. We'll know more about that in the new year once we hear more from the BC assessment as well.
Yeah, I think this was for 10 to 12 signs at those locations as well as the school. So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the budget of $10,000 for the signage to support animal control bylaw 2023-692.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Mayor Little, second by Councillor Shukin. Any further comments? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? So Councillor Gray opposes. Thank you. Okay. Schedule D, G. Community house paving. So this one is a $10,000 request, and right now we have myself and staff have worked on a disability grant that could be covered off by this if we were successful. If not, Mr. Creek has put in here it could be approved by the gas tax. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea because that parking lot is just terrible. But anyway, what I was wondering about is the ALR factor, and that the hoops that the cricket club had to jump through just to get that small hard surface area and the cricket pitch. So I know the Public Works, Mr. Watkins was talking about some, I couldn't really understand what he was saying, but it's some kind of a hard surface that is maybe has gaps in it or something that can be permeable, because it was my understanding that unless it's permeable, we have to go through and get approval from the Agricultural Land Commission. So I don't know if that applies, if that's wrong, or if we can just go ahead and do it, because it would be great to have it hard surface and much safer there.
That is a very good point. And when I took this to the Access West Shore group to get their input on types of surfaces, because I thought that the mats would have been good. They said there can be a tripping hazard. I've seen those mats used in other parking lots. I just thinking that is more environmental. Concrete, of course, would have been the best because it doesn't shift. Pavement can shift over time. This is, and I don't have an answer to that question. It's a good question because I know you're right, it's ALR. However, this isn't in a field, this is in a parking lot, so I'm not sure if staff's even explored that. So that's a very, very good point. The initial request was for 1 to 3 spots where the adult daycare van comes in a couple days a week, and now it's expanded because it was also identified when I sat with some of the members of the community house citing the type of surface that they do have there and the tripping hazards, not just with the gravel but getting onto the sidewalk was a serious concern too. So as accessibility is in our forefront of concerns in our community, we don't have a lot of solid safe surfaces. I see this as being a value, but certainly it would be important for us to find out from ALC what the restrictions are in doing this. A valid point. Councillor Shukin.
And Councillor Donaldson, my question is, how much area will actually be serviced. And, yeah, that's my broader question. So,
Right, because so it's gone from a few to maybe the whole length, is that correct? Yes, the whole length of that sidewalk. Councillor Gray?
Sorry, what's the question? What's the answer? I get the question, the size of the area. So are we doing the entire parking lot or just one part of it?
Councillor, do you know?
Well, as far as just because it says parking lot, I'm just assuming it's the whole area.
Okay, so maybe staff can answer that question because I don't have it either. I thought it was just along the sidewalk, not across the driveway.
where the parking stalls are.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we need to do something with the parking lot, the potholes are practically getting big enough to bury a car.
I'm totally in favor of this being done. The question was the amount of area. Does the staff know or? No, it doesn't sound like we know today. Maybe we could find out.
Mr. Creek, do you know?
I do not.
You do not. Mr. Payette may know. Yes.
Yeah, so last year, the request was for $3,000, so the request now is $10,000. And the question is that just cost going up, or is that an expansion of the area? So that's the first question. And is there any appetite for cost sharing with the Chosen Community House? I mean, with the garage sale, one day they made $40,000 on the garage sale. Surely they could also provide some funding for this as well.
Okay.
It'd be a good use of the money, actually.
Correct. So I'm going to ask Mr. Payette, can you give us an idea of the area if you are aware, please?
Thanks through the chair. So the area would be maybe 3 meters wide by the length of the parking lot, cemented. So that's what they're asking for, I believe. We could get a drawing, if you like, for the next round.
Okay, so it doesn't include the driveway that goes to the bin. It's just closest to the length.
So if you pull up in a car, you get out of the front passenger side or whatever, you're on the cement and go from there into the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does that answer? Oh.
Yeah, and we'll also ask staff to look into Councillor Epp's question about the ALR. As far as I know, we would have to ask permission as well. And pay for the fees for that application.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
Just to say, I think I get the sense that we all like to get this done. So it's really a question of getting a checklist in terms of AR, and then what's the best or what works well for accessibility. Does permeable paving work? If it works, go that way. If not, then go a more impermeable surface.
Yeah, so I did send that report to staff.
Super duper. Thank you.
So that they have input from people with lived experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as for the cost sharing, that could be something that we explore. We've done that before when we have grant need. We always ask for finances to see if, not unlike the water board, what we're doing here is a cost sharing initiative too. So that could be something that perhaps staff could investigate. Okay. So can we move on to the next one then? Okay, Schedule H. Garbage receptacles in the village center. The business development reserve is very healthy. I think that we've exceeded its max, and the business community has asked for the area to be a lot cleaner. They've been paying their taxes into this reserve for quite some time, so that's where this comes from. When I first looked at this, I thought, well, it was a lot of money, but then I looked at what the receptacle is, which is quite skookum. It's very durable. So that explains the cost here. And this is just 3 of them. I like the idea that it's bear resistant. I don't know if we have a lot of bears down here, but given everything that's going on in our community with concerns of attractants, I think this also bodes well for supporting residents to be aware of that sort of thing too. So what is the committee's feedback on this? Councillor Shu?
I will confess to having a few misgivings about this, just given the amount of somebody, I think it was Ms. Ballard, had mentioned the potential of household garbage being dropped in these receptacles. And we also saw the amount of dog poop bags when we put out the receptacle on Weirs Beach, I believe it was. That said, I do see that this is being funded through the Business Development Reserve, and that fund has been out there lurking and seemed to be waiting for a project. So I'm kind of two minds, but and again, as you pointed out before, it's not what's the cost of the thing, but there's also supplementary costs as well, and in this case, it's staff time. And if I could maybe even put Mr. Payette on the spot to see if he thought this was manageable from the Public Works side, or yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
could you comment? Perhaps?
I don't want to comment on that.
Okay.
I'll get some numbers together.
Sure.
Okay.
Councillor Gray.
Well, I respect the recast came from someone in the business community. I live downtown. I don't see much garbage around, so I'm not sure about the problem that we're solving.
So
like in other words, the garbage, I think that at each of the businesses goes back to the businesses typically, like in terms of walking around. I mean, occasionally you see a can, but no different than walking down Machosen Road. But maybe I'm not a good observer. So I wondered about if I was thinking about the first dollar, not thinking of the business development fund, but the first dollar on garbage receptacles, I would say our biggest issue is going to be our beaches. And we went down a little ways down that with the doggy do, but with the population pressure we're going to have on our borders and the invitation for people to come, I would look to that as my first place, and that would support the businesses as well. I mean, just having garbage containers out on our, the end of Taylor Road, Weirs Beach, that sort of thing. Expensive and all that, I know that. I'm not proposing it tonight. It's just first dollar, where would I put it? Probably in a location far away from existing garbage receptacles. But I don't know the full story, maybe.
Mary Lou?
Yeah, we have reports that every weekend the businesses have a pile of garbage on top of their garbage, not from their businesses, but from community members. And we have a number of people coming into the school area for the art pod and for events. And people will have garbage with them. I think it's only responsible as well. We've done very little for the downtown businesses to support them. We do have $63,000 in the reserve that we could use this, and I think this would be good thing to do to keep the rubbish off the street and not have the business owners be responsible for community garbage.
Councillor?
Yeah, I think as this has come from the business community, and there is money in that reserve that they haven't used for a few years. But I'm also wondering if it would be possible, given that amount, to contract out. I'm not sure how much it would cost, but to hire somebody that would actually monitor those garbage cans, keep them area clean and stuff, so that responsibility doesn't go to the public works staff. It doesn't seem like it would probably be that expensive to contract out someone just to keep a check on there.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, the more we do have events, the more trash we are seeing left behind, and we've seen that last year for sure. Okay, so on to the next one, which is the hearing loop. And this is also another disability grant initiative, and that is for this chamber here. So, Councillor Gray.
I'll just make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend to Council that we fund a hearing loop for Council chambers.
Okay, second motion by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Eck. Any discussions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Next one's Municipal Hall parking lot, $25,000 for, looks like it's for lighting and painting. It's just some safety enhancements. It's been fantastic having some light out there now already, albeit it's temporary, but so this is an initiative that was sought after earlier this year when we had some surplus funds. Now we see it before us under the capital investments. Any comments? Councillor Abt.
Yeah, I just wondered if this new light would adhere to our dark sky policy on municipal property.
I believe that it would have proper shading on the top of like a lamp compared to what we have right now, which is like a spotlight. Mayor Little?
Yeah, I was just wondering, would it be on a timer? So it would turn off at midnight or something?
I'm sure that we could have it on a timer. I also think that it's possible that it'll be solar.
Sorry, I didn't hear
It'll be
you.
solar energized as opposed to electricity. Councillor Schuker?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. This one, for me, isn't screaming out as a great need. And that's my initial response to it, so.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, I was just wondering, through the chair, to the CAO, the lighting that is provided now, is that going away, or does it need fixing or upgrading, or new covers or new timers, or what is that for?
Okay, through the chair, so you, are you referring to the temporary lighting that we just put up? It's temporary. So, space, it'll have to come down sooner or later. It's not quite sufficient, doesn't meet our dark sky policy. So, yeah. Any other questions on the parking lot? Needs some, the pavement needs some work. We do at the same time. Painting needs to be done. The center part with the lovely ornament there would be gone, and the light would go in the middle. Nice, attractive, municipal quality parking lot.
Any other comments? That answers some questions.
I'll make a motion to move the refurbish the municipal parking lot with new light.
And a second. Seconded by Mayor Little. Any other comments? Call it.
I'm going to vote in favor of this. I hear what Mr. Pyatt is saying, especially if we can, again, do an installation of lights that does coincide with our dark sky policy. I'm good with that, so be voting for it.
Okay.
And what was the motion again?
It's, I think it's the third box down, refurbishment of the hall parking lot with new light in the middle of the lot.
What was the motion, just the light?
No, refurbishing the municipal parking
The
lot.
entire parking and spaces and...
With the new light.
And
So just to be clear, I think I heard to replace the light, or put a light in.
Correct.
And Mr. Pyatt mentioned patching and painting as well.
I'm just finding out what the motion was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll add that to the motion then.
Thank you.
Do we have that, Ms. Hanson? Yes. Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed by Councilor Gray. Okay. Schedule K, school septic tank for $100,000. Comments? Mayor Little.
I think this is one of those things we just have to do. It's an aging infrastructure. We will need at least $100,000 to replace that septic field at some time. It's over 50 years old. Unless we plan on doing something else more up to date than a septic field, I can't see how we're going to get around this. And it has been a plague at the school for a very long time. So I'll be happy to move that motion.
Okay. So moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor F. Further discussion? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, just to say, I think this is replacing a tank. It makes sense. I'm not aware of other problems in the septic system there. And I think it's proper that it be replaced, and I understood it'd be $20,000 a year for 5 years.
Councillor Schuster, comments?
Yeah, I'm going to vote in support of this one, and the work itself is going to take place further on. So as it's going to age out even, as we go. I agree with Mayor Little. This is something that needs to be done. So,
Councillor?
Yes, I would be in support of this as well. The school's getting busier and busier with a lot of use right now, so which is only going to grow. So I think it's something that we just have to do, and the way it's going to be spread out over 5 years is the best way to do it.
And having all our washers refurbished on centers, it only makes sense that where everything is going, it should also be receiving it well. Councillor Gray, do you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe we should just get some clarity. If we replace the septic tank in 5 years' time, will we be plagued with problems from now until then? Is there what's the other problem, Mayor Little, that we're referring to here? Like, this is a preventive thing, so we're getting ready and we'll replace it when the time comes. But you're mentioning some other problems.
I don't think it's only preventative. I was under the impression that there were major breakages of the septic field going back many years. So that, for instance, it was suggested that we not have heavy equipment or build anything on that part of the field because it was very fragile. So I was also under the impression that it wasn't just the tank, but it was also the field that might need refurbishment. Perhaps, I don't want to put her on the spot, but perhaps the fire chief might know something about this. Through the chair. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Through the chair. Apologies, I wasn't expecting to be up here tonight. That is correct. There are some concerns in the field as well. I don't know what the cost of that's been received to replace, if that's just the septic tank or if that is the field as well. Both?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. And we haven't, right now, we haven't had any recent issues since the new washrooms have been installed. So that's a positive note.
That's very good news. Thank you.
Councillor Gray, do you have a comment or question for?
Well, just I'm confused. The request here is for a current septic tank is almost 50 years old and will need to be replaced. There's no reference to the field or any problems with the field. This request is, maybe we should just ask that it come back with a note that describes what's going to be done.
Yeah, we can bring back the report.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to know what this money's for.
Okay. Okay.
So we've got a motion on the floor, so I will,
Amend.
no, I'll withdraw the motion. We'll look to our corporate officer. Yeah, so withdrawing is fine.
Yeah, as long as it's okay.
Everyone's okay with that? Withdraw and further information? So, thank you very much. Okay, Schedule L. Trail barrier. Out of the General Capital Reserve. So this came by way of responding to the public's concerns with the use of the roadside trails, specifically Happy Valley to say the Fire Hall driveway, to delineate between parking and trail users. Councillor Gray.
I suggest we wait for the active transportation network plan. We've decided not to do other refurbishments until then, so I would.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to wait. I know this is something I've been trying to get since the last term, but maybe one of these days it'll happen before I'm out of here. But anyway, yeah, if the active transportation plan should be covering the whole sort of core area, and then we can really look at it and hopefully move ahead with the plan.
Councillor Shukin?
And Councillor Donaldson, I think this is being referred to like the area from the Rocky Point around Happy Valley.
Yes.
Okay, and I would agree. I mean, there's room for some barriers. There's also room to allow for some parking once you get past, I forget where it is exactly. And that is what we did at Machosen Day this year, is we pyloned off an area, but we did allow some space for parking. There is a place where cars and people can coexist, so, yeah. But I agree to wait for the AT plan.
Okay. Mayor.
Well, and Councillor Epps, right, she has been advocating for this, so when we put in that little trail, we should have done it at that time, because what we have now is on event days, we have cars parking on the trail and on the new culvert that was there. So for not only safety reasons, but for maintenance reasons, we really should move on this, but I'm happy to wait for the active transportation plan.
Yeah, the other area that the public brought to our attention when there's, again, lots of events, was the small section along William Head from the community hall down, I think probably the first driveway there. So it's a small section, but yeah, I agree. Yeah, waiting for the ATP to be complete, and then there's grants that can follow through with that too at another date. Councillor Gray?
I know we're going to move on now, but before we do, I wanted to point out that earlier we heard from Mr. Creek. One of the capital requests for next year was, I think it's $65,000. Some of it may get whittled down with grants, but for a municipal electric vehicle. And I'd like more information about that. Not necessarily today, but that's a big cost, and I just wonder what's the rationale.
Okay. Councillor Shukin?
Thank you.
So Councillor Donaldson, a comment I have, but where are we going after we're now through the capital requests? And I'm just trying to think about when I'm going to pose this question to you, Mr. Pyatt and Mr. Creek. But what are we doing after this? Are we going to go to?
So after this, I'm going to actually ask Mr. Creek if there's anything further in the report that we have not discussed or he needs to.
Through the chair. So nothing per se in this report that we'll be talking about. I guess the next one, sometime in January there, either 16th or 14th or whenever we settle on a date, that'll be on the special projects, and then hopefully I'll have more information for the roads so we can update that. And then we'll come back with the questions here about these different capital projects, provide that additional information to council, and then go from there. Next one is, we'll get the BC assessment information at the end of December so that I can start calculating and figuring where we're at, and then make some adjustments. We're going to get the final number from Econ and all those types of things. So we'll start firming up a good number come January.
Through you, Councillor Donaldson. So you mentioned special projects. So we typically refer to them as one-time costs. So that, did you say that's coming up, Mr.
Through the chair? Correct. Yeah, I'm just getting rid of that one time because it's not like a one-time expense for the district. So
thank you.
It's kind of a misnomer.
Great.
Any other questions for Mr. Creek? We're on the capital budget. Councillor Shukin.
The one other thing that I might throw a pitch out for, I'm not sure where it fits in terms of capital and cost allowances, but the bathrooms adjacent to the farmers market. There does need to be some new approach taken with that. So at the grounds group meeting that we had a number of months ago, number of weeks ago now, there was talk about a door timer that would open and close the doors lock them at a certain time. So basically, say 10 p.m. locked, reopened at 7 a.m. That might be one of the solutions to keeping the doors open on a regular basis, and especially for the market during the day or whatnot. So again, as we've heard from several people connected with the market, something does have to be done with the bathrooms. So, again, yeah.
Okay. Mayor Lim.
Yeah, just through you to Councillor Shukin, what problem are we trying to solve? What exactly?
The bathrooms are notoriously either locking automatically because there's lack of knowledge in terms of how to, how to work with the punch code now, or they're running out of toilet paper, or they're locked and can't be opened, or somebody has gone in and made a mess. Sometimes they're not working. I'll forward the email that I got from the weekend experience. One of the bathrooms was just absolutely filthy. I'm not sure why, but it sounds like the toilet wasn't working either. So it's the lock, but there's some deeper things as well that need to be tested too. So yeah, but this is an ongoing issue that we've heard all through basically the market season. The doors aren't opening, one is locked, one doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that's something that we need to get some feedback from staff on, if we need a budget for that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And,
are we going to manage that, or is this just staff? We defer this to staff to take care of.
Oh, staff, of course. So no, I provided Mr. Pyatt with an example of what a timed lock would be. I'm not sure what the costs are, so I suspect they're not great in terms of the actual material or the technology, the hardware, but it's the installation and all that. So yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm getting the same reports about cleanliness and different uses, and I'm not sure if going till 10 o'clock at night is going to help. Maybe shorter. There's a lot of activity after hours when all our staff and general public have left the premises. Councillor Gray.
If I could just ask through the chair, Mr. Creek, I believe, sort of looking through things, that there's reference in the written notes about, it's not exhaustive because we've got these specific projects to look at, but last year's approved budgets or approved capitals are in our on the sheet on page 27. I think they're all listed there.
Through here. Yep, correct. Yeah. I just copied that and then just added in the columns. I've adjusted for the number of those road projects I took out based on what we had there, but a lot of the other ones I just kind of moved over, like the fire hall. I moved that to 26, 27 rather than 25, 26.
And through the chair, you were looking for approval of continuing or finishing up those projects.
Yeah, as it sits right now, because it has been approved, we would be going forward with anything that was approved in 24 for 25.
Yeah.
So if you guys wanted to say, no, cancel this one, but push back on that one, we would need that, just so we don't end up going to RFP on anything like that.
Thank you. No concerns from me at the moment.
Okay. Okay, so we can move on to community input and then payments. If everybody is finished with questions from Mr. Creek.
Thanks, John.
Looks like we have an agreement. So I'll open up the mics to the public. Please feel free to come up to the mic and ask your questions pertaining to these discussions. State your name and the street in which you live, please.
Tamara Ballard, I'm a resident. It's actually not to this, but it made me think about it because of the talk of painting lines and whatnot. Do you guys plan on painting the lines at the school? Because it is awful. And I've been to quite a few events there that the parking it could be much better if the lines were clear. Because there's people parking all different ways. And one person takes up 3 spots because of the way they're parked. So if that's something that could be looked into sooner versus later.
There is line painting in a previous budget we've already discussed, and I believe it encompasses the fire department parking lot at the back as well.
Okay.
It was one of those projects I think we're supposed to go with last year and we haven't, so.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place. I happened to have coffee with Mike Seela this morning, and he was commenting that in terms of using the wheelchair across the area from the new school, if you want to call it that, to the old, he said the parking lot for wheelchairs is absolutely abysmal. it really has to have some work done. He finds it very difficult to navigate on that parking lot. The other questions which I had, one was, I've been given to understand, that particularly with regard to Royal Bay, with the mall and with the school, that there are quite a significant increase in traffic on Machosen Road. What are the implications of that in terms of the repair and replacement policy with regard to Machosen Road over the long term? And whether or not that has to be readjusted according to the models that you have. The other comment that I wanted to make was, and I'm not sure if I'm speaking out of turn here or not, but there had certainly been some discussion at the community house with regard to the development of a parking stall for handicapped access. Basically is a one-stall unit beside the handicapped parking site beside the tree. There had been, I understand, a bandied around figure that this would cost about $3,000 to do, which sort of seemed appropriate considering that we're looking at something basically as wide as to be able to handle one van, and that would be about it. Apparently some other bandied figures came in around $7,000 to $10,000. No real great faith attached into the figures. But the figures for $10,000 here strikes me that, at least as the way I was understanding the discussion, having a pavement along the entire parking area at the community house. That's not going to be done for $10,000. That's way under budget as far as I can see, unless we're talking about one stall. I'm not clear from the discussion tonight and what's in here, what's being proposed for the parking or paving. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Excuse me, my apologies, I need to leave.
Okay. Thank you.
Nobody's getting up, leaving. Can I speak or no?
Yes, go ahead.
Leonore Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. I think there was a point missing here about bridges. I oversaw putting the gas line on Vancouver Island for the Ministry of Transportation. We would never have permitted a gas line or even CRD water attached to a bridge unless it was a public bridge. It is not, if it was a private one, those people would have applied themselves. But a public bridge, like the one we have here, is a public bridge. You wouldn't have put a huge gas line and improve it, you know, without it being a public bridge, and you oversaw them all and were okayed. So that is something you seem to be missing, is the fact that it can, they apply for a gas line coming through, and it has to be a public bridge. Can't be a private bridge, right? Those are major gas lines going through there, right? And you usually either go under the water or attached, and they're very governed very seriously. So that's just a comment.
Thank you.
I think it's understood as a public bridge. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a comment? Okay, seeing.
I do want to address something that may have been misconstrued, because I keep hearing that this bridge is to benefit, benefits one person only. It's such such a disingenuous statement. It's misinformation. There are a lot of people that bridge was there long before the subdivision, which is, as the gentleman who just left points out, not all subdivisions have two entrances and egresses. Totally understand that. But nobody's asking to add those. But I think I used the analogy, you have a fire extinguisher in your home and your neighbor does not, does that mean we should take mine out? We have it. It's there. It's a safety issue. There is going to be so many costs, as the CFO might recognize, as opportunity costs for not having that bridge if there's a fire. The liability costs, there's a lot of risk if that bridge is taken down. And the other, Ms. Councillor F left, about cars turning onto Happy Valley. I don't know if anybody watched those ones in Fort, whatever it was, McMurray in Alberta. I didn't see too many cars. I saw a lot of trucks, a lot of trailers, and a lot, because people expect they're not coming back to their homes. I have a 40-foot RV. It's not making a right-hand turn onto the Galloping Goose Trail, and it's going to go straight through. And I actually want to do a test. I'm hoping somebody will help me do a test. I'm happy to do it and see how much structure movement is on that bridge. But the other thing I remember reading was 9 minutes would cut off if there was a fire at the bottom of Ferncliff. There's 9 minutes cut off for the fire truck to zip over that and put it out in one of those 4 or 5 houses down at the bottom there. So that, I'm not sure, that's a big risk, but that's a decision, and I will never tell a firefighter how to do your job, but I actually kind of gives me a little more comfort. Not using it for fire trucks means we do have an unblocked exit, so unless that's where the fire is. So I did say about the continually saying about this, that's just absolutely wrong. I believe that we've got this petition, and if anybody like me to go around and do more and get more signatures to see if there's more people who support not having to face the risk. There's a little, taxpayers have to pay, but if there's something that the municipality does or does not do, also has to pay. And I'm going to want to see what it would cost if people can't get out. And no, I'm not walking, no matter what people say. So on that, if anybody has anything that I can do to help provide more information or vocalize more concerns to keep our residents safe on that street, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, committee, so we have some pinks before us, and we've had, I think everything's been covered. Thank those who actually have taken the time to write into us to express their concerns and their wishes and thoughts. The one that we haven't, I don't think, talked about is the one from the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association, and I believe, Mr. Creek, you could clarify for me, but this request, which we've heard from this organization numerous times, but I believe there's some funds set aside or leftover maybe from last year that we didn't quite access through the bufferland, that maybe this could be integrated somehow?
Through chair. Yep, there was some one of those one-time expense fundings that we didn't end up getting through in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And this would easily fit inside that. So we can carry over that funding if you want into that project.
Councillor Shuka?
So would we further talk about this when we bring up special projects? Like I think that'd be...
Yeah, so I guess that's what my thing was, is that line item in the one-times, or is that 20,000, or I think it was 18 that was left in an operational, that's what I wasn't sure which part of the budget it was in, where it would be applicable.
Through the chair. Yep, we just put it in the special projects line for next year. And we could just say, hey, we're carrying over the funding that we didn't use 2024 into 2025. No tax implications, everybody's still good.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Any comments, Ken, on that? Councillor Gray?
Just to say, there is one other letter here from Kathleen McPherson to do with the old school, but I think we're still talking about that, so these are helpful to have and can be part of our discussion as we go forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that's all for Section 3 reports and paints. So thank you, Mr. Creek, for guiding us through the budget presentations again today and for incorporating the finance committee's input as needed. And gratitude also goes to the CAO Payette, Chief Dunlop for being here today, sharing some information for us, and our administrative staff, Ms. Hanson and Ms. Miller, for meticulously organizing every meeting in these chambers. I just have one last thing to say before we adjourn, and that is a holiday message. As we embrace the holiday season, let us celebrate the generosity that defines our rural community. This is a time when kindness shines brightest, when neighbors support one another, share in giving, and show compassion to those in need. From kind gestures and shared meals to contributions to a local food bank, these acts of generosity create connections that strengthen our community. Let us remember the true meaning of the season, goodwill to all. Wishing you and your loved ones a joyful holiday season and a new year filled with kindness, connection, and blessings in our vibrant community. We have one more committee meeting, which is next week. And on that, I would like to call for an adjournment of this meeting. Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Schiffman. All in favor? Adjourn. Thank you very much, everybody.
And so, Councillor